In chapter 2, verses 1 through 11, John tells us about Jesus' first miracle, turning water into wine during the wedding in Cana. Jesus, Mary, and his disciples have been invited to a wedding in the neighboring town of Cana. At some time during the celebration, Mary informs Jesus that the wine has run out and that there is no more, creating a potentially embarrassing and shameful situation for the groom. Although she is unsure how Jesus will react or what he will do, she feels the need to bring this problem to him and trust that he would do what was right. After directing them to fill the ceremonial washing jars, Jesus commanded the servants to bring some to the master of the banquet. The master praised the groom for saving the best wine for last, rather than getting them drunk on good wine and then switching to cheaper wine. For most of the people in attendance, this miracle passed before them without their even knowing it. But to Jesus, Mary, and the disciples, this event initiated a new era of Jesus' ministry and began to change the relationship that man would have with God forever. Many of us think of our relationship with God as something we work towards making a little better every day. Sometimes we may even see our acceptance by God as something we have to work at, to become a little more worthy every day. But what if Jesus wants something different than that from us? What if Jesus does not want us to see our relationship with him as a checklist of goods and bads, or as a test we receive a score on? What if he only wants us to trust and believe in him as our Savior, no matter how worthy we feel, how well we behave, or how well we do each day? Indeed, this is all that Jesus wants. Ancient Judaism worked like this checklist. Do this. Don't do that. This is good. This is bad. But Jesus changed all of that. He ushered in an era where we can have a personal relationship with God, and all he wants from us is our belief in him and him alone as our Savior. What do we see when we evaluate our relationship with Jesus? Do we see the old legalistic relationship or the new messianic relationship that Jesus ushered in? In John chapter 2, verses 1 through 3, we see that Jesus cared about and reacted to the heartfelt needs of the people he interacted with. In the first century Jewish culture, failing to properly provide for the guests could be seen as an insult not only to the guests, but also to the bride's family. It could also bring the groom's ability to provide for his new wife into question. Such social embarrassment and a disgrace would have been overwhelming for a young man just starting out in his married life and would mar his relationship with the entire community. Jesus not only understood this, but also reacted to it with the love and compassion that only he possessed. Throughout the ministry that he was now ushering in, Jesus established and highly valued the relationships he made with those around him. He truly cared about people's needs, whether they were physical, mental, spiritual, or in this case, social. Mary not only brought the situation to Jesus' attention, but did so expectantly. She knew that he was more than a man, and that solving this problem was well within his abilities. When she tells him that they have run out of wine, she's not merely making conversation, she's expecting him to act. We see then, in verses 3 through 7, how Jesus gently rebukes Mary when she asks him to respond as his mother, but later honors her when she responds with faith and trust. Jesus' initial response to Mary, using the word genai, is courteous but not endearing. It is most commonly translated as dear woman, but could be considered more in line with the southern use of ma'am to a non-family member. By using a term like this, Jesus is establishing space between himself and Mary as mother and son. He does this not to be mean, but to create the opportunity for her to come to him as her Savior. Once he began his ministry as the Messiah, even his own mother had to approach him with faith and trust. After this gentle rebuke, Mary tells the servants to do whatever Jesus commands them, showing her faith in his ability to provide. Originally, he argues that his time has not yet come, but once she responds with this faith, Jesus honors her by fulfilling her request. Jesus' changing of water into wine in verses 8 through 10 is symbolic of his fulfilling and replacing the old Jewish law with something superior. In this analogy, the old wine represents the old Jewish law, and the wine Jesus created represents the new messianic age that he was ushering in. The old way was sufficient in guiding the Jewish people towards a right relationship with God for many centuries. However, Jesus was ushering in a new age. In this new age, he would establish a relationship with God's people that was not centered on legal requirements, but on a relationship with their Creator and Savior. When Martin Luther prepared and delivered a sermon, he no doubt used the same references as any pastor today does: several translations of the Bible, concordances, lexicons in Greek, Aramaic, and Hebrew, dictionaries, biblical commentaries, many pages of notes and different variations of the sermon. What for Martin Luther amounted to a stack of books and papers several feet tall, for me, can all be contained on this. My iPhone can hold thousands of books, as many notes and sermons as I could ever write, and even allow me to listen to music while I do it. Books and papers were sufficient for us to store information for many centuries, but even the most ardent technology critic has to agree that the technology available today to do the same thing is vastly superior. A similar thing occurred when Jesus replaced the old legalistic form of religion with a personal faith in him. What was once good enough was replaced with something even better. Concluding this text in verse 11, Jesus' disciples believed in him as the Messiah, not merely because he performed miracles, but because these miracles served as signs that pointed to his divinity. Jesus revealed his glory and divinity through signs that pointed to his status as the Son of God. He revealed many signs along many steps of his ministry, ultimately pointing to the cross as the final sign. Merely knowing the miracles, and even how they happened, is not enough to form a complete faith. For a complete faith, we must have a comprehension of what these miracles point to. The servants at the wedding saw the sign, but failed to understand the meaning. They witnessed the miracle, but failed to understand that it pointed to Jesus as the Son of God. The disciples, on the other hand, saw the sign and understood how it revealed Christ's glory. When they understood, verse 11 tells us, they placed their faith in him. Jesus saw a heartfelt need at the wedding in Cana, and he responded to it to prevent the groom from experiencing embarrassment and shame. With this, his first miracle, Jesus established the beginning of his ministry and the transition from a legal religious culture to a religious culture based on personal faith in him. So some of us may still be looking at our relationship with God as a checklist of do's and don'ts, or that we can even earn our way to salvation. Others may feel that salvation is based on if I am a good enough person, or do I behave better than I used to. What Jesus wants is not for us to merely behave ourselves or adhere to a checklist, but for us to reach out to him in faith and trust as Mary and his disciples did during his first miracle. I encourage everyone to evaluate your relationship with Christ and ask yourself, is it a checklist or a personal relationship of faith? If you do not have a personal relationship with Jesus Christ, then I ask you to reach out to him accept His gracious salvation, and begin one today.